Hey everybody, it's Michelle Walker-Wade coming to you with another Get Mobilized moment. And today I'm going to talk about the fourth on our list of the skills that employers want most. And this is coming again from the National Association of Colleges and Employers 2014 Job Outlook Report. And we've already talked about the first three, and today we're going to talk about the fourth one on the list, which is the ability to communicate with persons inside and outside of the organization. So fourth on the list is the ability to communicate with persons inside and outside of the organization. And on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, this item got a 4.48. Okay, so what is it about communication? This one is a tricky one because communication is so vital to business and communications of all kinds, and it's something that we all do in order to survive. But some of us do it better than others. To how well we communicate, we have to communicate. And so employers are saying this is right up there with extremely important. 4.48 is somewhere between very important and extremely important. So what is it that makes communication so tricky? Why is it so hard? You would think if we're talking, we're communicating, right? But actually that's not the case. Just because we're talking does not mean we are communicating. Now, communicating or communications in its most simplest definition that I can think of is simply to reach mutual understanding. Okay, so until mutual understanding between the 2 or 3 or more individuals who are engaged in communication, until mutual understanding, not acceptance, okay, but mutual understanding has been reached, communication has not happened. It may have started, but it has not completed. All right. So without good communication, these are some of the things that you just can't do without good communication. So without being able to get to a good mutual understanding. All right. Again, I'm not talking about agreement. I mean understanding. Without getting to a good mutual understanding, you cannot build or even participate on a team. And remember, the ability to work on a team was like the very top skill that employers want most. They want employees who can work on a team. Communication is necessary to work on a team. Very important, all right, to building a team. Teamwork relies on communication. Without good communication, you can't build trust. It's difficult to build trust with another individual with whom you cannot communicate. So now you may say, well, people who are mute or cannot speak build communication. Build trust. They're still communicating, even if it's not a verbal form of communication, but they're still communicating in a way that builds trust. I've worked in environments before where someone I needed to communicate with could not speak English. And so our communications, we couldn't verbally talk to each other, but we still had to build trust. And so we came up with all these other kinds of ways to express what it was that we needed or wanted or what we were trying to say in ways other than communicating. Sometimes you had to act it out. Sometimes you had to show pictures. There are some things even we can write them and then kind of figure out what the other person was trying to say. We could draw pictures, get pictures on the internet. So there were different forms of communication that allowed us to build trust and to be able to work together. But we still had to come to a mutual understanding of what we were looking for, what we were trying to express. And we did that in ways other than verbal communication. But you hear I said written communication because we would write notes, visual communications because we would show pictures and images. So there are other ways to communicate, but the bottom line is we have to establish a mutual understanding. Without good communication, if you're working in a company, and this is all about work, we're talking about workplace communications, you cannot explain a product, you can't explain a process, you can't explain a problem, and even if you have come up with a solution to the problem, you can't explain it. And if you can't explain any of these things, if I'm trying to, maybe if I'm in sales and I'm trying to explain a product to someone, or maybe I'm in customer service and the customer can't doesn't understand my explanation of the product, the chances of them purchasing that particular product or getting their issue resolved as a result of my helping them is very slim, because communication or mutual understanding cannot be established. So without good communications, you can't explain a product, can't explain a process, you can't explain a problem, you can't explain a solution. So you can't reach mutual understanding about what is this product and how does it work and why should I need it, what's wrong with the product, what's wrong with the process I'm using at work, am I using this item right? Well, if we can't communicate, there's no way I can tell you or you can hear from me the answer to that question. So we'll never resolve those problems, okay? And without good communication, you can't express your wants, you can't express your needs, and you can't express your expectations. And all these are very important in a workplace. So you have to say to yourself, okay, it's so important, and we all talk, and we all can hear, so why aren't we communicating? Why is it so hard? Why is mutual understanding so difficult to achieve? You kind of have to think about this. There are a couple of things. There's social-based barriers, and then there are skills-based barriers. And those are the only two barriers I'm going to talk about today, because there are some others, but I'm only going to talk about social barriers and skills barriers to communication. In terms of social barriers, people perceive things differently. Okay, so because you can say something to me and I can perceive it very differently from what you said. It makes it difficult for us to kind of get to, okay, exactly what is it that he or she meant here. So it makes it difficult to establish meaning. And if we can't establish meaning, we can't establish understanding. So just our perceptions that we come with can be a barrier, a social barrier to communications. Our cultural and community backgrounds can cause us to experience certain barriers to communications as well. And that's because we just communicate in different ways. There's a Japanese way of communication, and it's called hear one, understand 10. Hear one, understand 10. All right. And this is a Japanese approach to communication, and they use it both in business and in their personal lives at home. And what it means is I should be able to speak minimally, hear one, with minimal explanation, and you should be able to hear 10 or hear multiple. You should, our relationships and our cultural understandings and our environmental understandings should be that much aligned so that I don't have to speak as much for you to understand greatly what I'm saying. So that's hear one, understand 10, which basically wordy explanations are not necessary in the Japanese culture. Here in the United States, there's something called Minnesota NACE. So people from Minnesota have this cultural way of being. It's called Minnesota NACE. With Minnesota NACE, you go out of your way to just be nice in all areas of life. You avoid confrontation. You do whatever it takes to make sure everyone perceives or sees that we're maintaining this really nice and orderly way of being. It's Minnesota NACE. What happens also in Minnesota NACE is because you are going out of your way to avoid confrontation or to maintain a nice appearance, you don't say things that are really true to you. Okay, so you just don't say them. I was listening to a young lady who was doing a presentation. She talked about how she ordered something at a restaurant and didn't like the taste of it. And so she basically told them, you know, I don't really like the way this tastes. Can I change it for something else? And all the other people who were with her, who are from Minnesota, were just floored. How could you do something like that? We're so embarrassed. What she should have done, according to them and to Minnesota NACE, is just thrown the thing away without being seen and just got something else to eat. Okay, but then there's this thing called confrontational Californians, and Californians are the most confrontational. I would say maybe New York are more confrontational, but confrontational Californians, we want to talk about it. We want to put it all on the table. Transparency is huge. And so we want to talk. We want to be able to say what it is, how it is, and get some things resolved just by, and I don't mean argumentative confrontation, but just truthful to Californians, truthful and real confrontation. So what happens when Minnesota NACE meets confrontational California in a workplace environment where we need to communicate? If Minnesota NACE is constantly trying to be nice and confrontational California is constantly speaking up about whatever he or she feels, we're not going to achieve mutual understanding, because the Californian will never know what the Minnesotan is thinking about. And the Minnesotan will know what the Californian is thinking about, but they'll be so offended that it won't even really matter what was said. And then if we add to this, one of our Japanese, someone from the Japanese culture who wants to say it very briefly, but then we have other cultures that are elaborate in their explanations and their understandings, we can never achieve that mutual understanding. We've got these four players here. We've got the Japanese with the hear 1, understand 10. We've got the Minnesota NACE. We've got the confrontational Californian. And I'm just going to choose our Hispanic employees who are very elaborate in their communication, who are giving you the full story with all the pictures and the bells and the whistles. I love the Hispanic culture. So if we've got the four of us in the room all trying to communicate, socially there are some barriers that's going to make it difficult for us to all achieve mutual understanding. All right? Talking about social barriers to communication. In addition to these social barriers, there are skills-based barriers to communication. Okay? A person may not possess a rich enough vocabulary to articulate their feelings. Or a person may not possess enough background knowledge about what's going on to even join in the conversation. I know I'm uncertain because I don't really watch television. I may watch 1 hour of television probably every other day. I just don't watch TV very much other than the news and maybe one show just to relax. But so when I'm with groups of people at work and they're making all these conversations and alluding to things that happen on TV, but I'm just completely out of there's no way I can get mutual understanding with them because I've never seen the show. I probably have never even heard of the show. And if they're using references from this television show, it kind of leaves me out of the conversation. So, that would be a skill-based barrier for me because I don't have enough background knowledge about this topic in order to communicate, to participate in this conversation. But this doesn't just happen with things about TV in the workplace. For example, if you're just you don't have as good an understanding about the process flow of the job, there is a skills-based problem right there. The skills-based problem is you don't understand the process enough to participate in the conversation, or to even understand where the conversation is coming from and where it's going to. So mutual understanding can never be achieved. And my last skill-based barrier, there are more, but I'm going to stop here because I am way over my time. But this is a skill that we all need to work on, and that is being a good listener. Poor listeners are not good communicators. Listening is a good 80% of communicating. We like to think that speaking is the biggest part of communication, but really listening is far more important to achieving mutual understanding. Listening is more important. Listening weighs in more. Oftentimes, if you really, really listen to what a person is saying, and not have all these other conversations going on in your own head. We call it noise. Not have all this other noise going on in your head. You can understand more about what the person is saying. You'll be able to pick up on additional verbal and nonverbal clues or cues. If you are really, really listening. When you're really, really listening, we don't cut people off in mid-conversation. When you're really, really listening, for example, if I ask a question and you have really, really listened to my question, then you'll be more apt to respond to the question that I asked. And what happens a lot of times is a person will ask a question, and I've seen this in people doing presentations, running discussions, Q&A sessions, one-on-one conversations, where one party asks a question and the other person goes on a long, wordy explanation that is, just a little shy of the question that was asked. But the longer that person continues to talk, the farther they veer to the right or to the left, instead of hitting on the head the answer to the question that was asked. They're answering the question they heard, but not the one that was asked. Some ways that we can combat all of this is, number one, always after something has said, feel free to ask a clarifying question. A clarifying question is simply one that helps to confirm that what you believe you heard is what was said. So for example, after a person has talked or said whatever they're going to say, then you say, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You said blah, 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 blah. And the way I understand this is that means this. Am I right? And they'll say yes or no, or they'll either clarify what you may have misunderstood from what they had to say initially. And then from there, you can go on and engage in a conversation or ask even deeper questions so that you can hone in on getting all the information out there that is necessary for you and the other person to achieve a mutual understanding. Now, communication takes time. And what you see in many organizations is no one wants to take the time that it takes to have good communication. This is why team meetings are important, and having an agenda with an objective to your agenda are very important, so that everyone knows by the end of this meeting, we should all have a mutual understanding about this topic and this topic and that topic. And then you can go from there to just determine if we don't have a mutual understanding about these three topics, we know we need to come back and revisit this, and then kind of go from there. Okay, that is skill number 4. Again, the ability to communicate with persons inside and outside of the organization. I have tons I could say on this topic. I may come back and do a part 2 to this video, just because I have more that I would love to share with you about communicating. I've only talked about verbal communications and a little bit about nonverbal, but I haven't even touched on written communications, which are huge in business because we do so much by email, so much by text. So written communications is still huge. And you know what else? I haven't even talked about who's inside the organization and who's outside the organization and how communication may vary based on that factor. I may come back and do a video, part 2 to this one. We'll see. But until then, listen, you prepare to do well. All right? Prepare to do well and go out and get mobilized. This is Michelle Walker Wade. You have an awesome day.